So today the goal is that we want to connect, from the MVC application to the Docker SQL server, right? Okay, so let us start here. So I will share my screen. So you can see here what I've done is I have this Docker here, right? And in this, we have this SQL server, right? Remember we did this. This SQL server is running in Docker. And we want to go and create a ASP.NET Core application which will connect to this SQL server. Okay. That means that we need to now pass connection strings. We need to now pass a lot of parameters to it, right? So how do we do it, right? So first, in today's 30 minutes, I want to talk about that. How do we go and parameterize our Docker, right? So if our ASP.NET Core application needs a connection string, it needs a logger path, it needs some kind of a key or whatever, right? How do we go ahead and pass those values, right? Now, there are definitely various ways of passing the values, but one of the most preferred way and as a best practice is to use environmental variables, right? Environmental variables. I'm sorry for my English. English is my second language. So please excuse my. So here is a Docker application we have. So we'll use environmental variables. Okay. Environmental variables means those are variables which are given in the operating system, which are provided at the operating system level, or it is provided somewhere in the environment, but not inside your ASP.NET application, right? So you can see here, for example, if in this computer, if there is a environmental variable called as test, it will, this code which you see on the UI will try to get that value, right? So it's a very small application out here. So if I go, if I see in my PC, I will just go ahead here. And what I've done is in the environmental variables, I have created two variables. You can see. So I created test hey. So just as a value hey. Also, in this, because environmental variables again are two types: user level variables, which are computer based, and system level variables. So I just provided that test even in the system level as well. So here also I provided test, So hey from system. Okay. So if the user is not available, he will take from the system. If the system is available, so if the user is not available, it will take from the system. If the system is not available, it will display null. Okay. So very simple code. So if I run this at this moment, I should see hey. I hope that it got your idea saying that, okay, so that means that this environmental variable, if I can pass from Docker, that is great, right? So now there are three ways of passing the environmental variables in Docker, right? So let us talk about it. So first one. So today, guys, this 30 minutes will dedicate only to environmental variables and Docker Compose file. We'll talk about the Docker Compose file as well. And then it is just a matter of providing that connection string. SQL Server is already running and we are almost done, right? So first is, one way is that you can specify in the Docker file only. So in the Docker file itself, you can see here, what I've done is in the Docker file itself, you can go ahead and you can provide this environmental variables. Like you can see here, I'm providing here env test Docker value 123 and done. Okay. So you have to create the image. You will create the image. So now remember, this is provided at the image level. So when the image is created, at that time only this variable is set. Okay, which probably many developers won't want it. They will say, no. The image, we don't want to create at the image level. We want to create at the instance level. So we can have instance 1, which has a different environmental variable. It has instance 2, which has a different environmental variable, right? So that way. So what we'll do is, so this code I have already uploaded. This code also I have already explained in the last part of the video. If you remember, all this import module, this HTTP, enable features, all this has been explained. So we'll just go ahead and just run this env, this file out here. And we want to see this Docker value 123 in our application, right? So I'm going to go out here and let me go to that folder. So the folder is out here. Okay. I have copied all the file, right? And let us go and try to set. I'm sorry. So remember, here the environmental variable will be baked into the image file. Okay. So it is not at the instance level, right? So I'll just go ahead and I will say Docker build MVC core image 1, right? And remember that almost, all the images also, the SDK files, etc. I have just kept it open out there, kept it running so that we don't have to waste too much time, right? So this is one way of doing it. So you can see it is getting loaded. Let it get installed. Remember, it installs .NET Framework. It enables .NET Framework. It installs IIS. It does a lot of things. So let it happen. Let it keep happening at the backend. The another way of doing things is by using the Docker Compose file. Okay. One more way of doing is is that you can provide it in the in the run itself. Means you can provide it in this way. So first way is that you can provide in the image. Second, if you don't like the image way, what you can also do is you can provide like this. You can go ahead and you can provide like this. Yeah, that is the syntax. So you can see a Docker run, whatever is your image, and then you will say test value is some 1, 2, 3, right? So again, if you want, you can go and provide from the Docker run. The third way, which is a very professional way of doing, is by using the Docker Compose file. So you write a Docker Compose file, and the Docker Compose file has everything. It has all the dependencies. If you see at this moment, when we are doing Docker run, we are providing this port number and this port number, and then this and that and this and that. So if we can write this in a file and we just say Docker run, right? Docker run -d. Okay. So the Docker Compose file, if you see out here, so there is a Docker Compose file. It should be exactly like this, docker-compose.yaml file, and it should be present in the directory where the Docker file is, right? So if I open this standard file out there, right? And this is what it is. So I'm saying here, I want to go and build in the current directory. Remember, this is YAML. YAML means name value pair, name and value. YAML is it stands for yet another markup language. In other words, it is a markup language which is meant, where the user can see the configuration data. It is more user friendly. For example, if your configuration is in JSON, he has to understand those curly brackets and square brackets and so on, right? So here it is very easy. It is space indented. It is meant, for specifically for admins who don't want to get into JSON complications and XML complications. So if you see a name and value, if you have a collection, you will say name and ports. So outside port and inside port. If you give one more port number, it will run your application in 2 port numbers, right? And you can see also I'm setting up the environmental variables out here. So one is that the proper way is that you can just use the Docker Compose file. Okay. So 3 ways of doing it. And first one, in the image itself. See now what developers do, they provide some base values, which are in is the part of the image. Afterwards, in the runtime, when you want to override, they provide the Docker Compose file. So I've seen that, developers, they provide some default value, which is present in the image itself if something goes wrong, or else, they will use the Docker Compose file. Okay. So there it is. It is running, right? So guys, any questions on environmental variables and how it works? Yes. 3 ways of doing it. Now it started. You have to press enter or else. So sad. If you have any questions, you can put down on the chat. Right. So must be until this runs, we can have a look at the chat as well. Okay. So there are 2 questions here, and one is that can't we leverage web.config file or app settings.json file? You can leverage app settings.json file and a web config file, but remember that at the end of the day, the problem is then you have to modify the app settings file, right? You have to modify the app setting files, and I mean, think about it. If you're modifying at the code level, the problem is that you have to create an instance of it. It is better to modify at the container level. Please understand. If you just visualize it, right? Yes, you can go ahead. You can create a shared volume. In the shared volume, you can go and modify your config file, app setting file, give the URL of whatever it is, right? All that you can do. It is just simply modifying the app setting file. But I think the best way would be that you created an image and then you say, okay, then you provide it from outside. Because if you're dependent on the application, right? If you're dependent on if you're taking the values from the application config files, then you have to start modifying the files, then you have to go inside the container, right? And so on, right? Okay. So can we pass a variable in Azure and Key Vault? Yes, you can, right? I'll come to that later on. Very good question. I will take that question as a part of this also, right? So let me just put it out here. I actually wanted to show a demo, but it's just that, so one, I think definitely we need to see that how to secure these variables, environmental variables, by using a secret key or some kind of that, right? So I'll keep that topic, sorry. So, okay. Now there it is. You can see it is created, right? So let us go ahead and do a Docker run. The image is created, right? So Docker run, you know what, like, I don't want to type commands anymore. So I'll just copy paste it from there. Remember, this Docker help file is there. Please use it. So Docker run this and this. And I hope I should be able to see at this moment, I pass the value as Docker value 123. I should be able to see Docker value 123. Okay. So if I go out here in the containers, there it is. You can see it running. And let us run this. Yeah, there it is. You can see now this value we have provided from outside. Okay. So good, right? Now, the next thing is you will say, no, like we don't want to do this. So this is good, but we want to do it at the instance level. Means when the instance is created, not as a part of the image, when the instance is created. So for the instance level, what you can do is we can use this Docker Compose file. You can see the Docker Compose file is here. It is using this image. If you don't give an instance name, it will take some instance name like MVC app 1, MVC app 2, and we are passing here ASD as the environmental variables. And I'm expecting this will override the image environmental variable, right? So let us go ahead here. Now, in order to run this, you will use Docker Compose. So first thing is the one which I showed was just a simple Docker run. The environmental variable was a part of the Docker file. So you can see that we have the Docker Compose.yaml out here. Now, in order to run, you will use Docker Compose. So we'll go ahead and we will run here Docker Compose. Where is it? Where is my document? Docker Compose. Where is the command? I don't remember commands. I'll just Google it up. Well, I should have written in the document somewhere. So shabby and so dirty. Actually, what happens is, I'll just Google Baba ki jai. Docker Compose command. So sorry. So how to use the Docker Compose command? I'll just go to the Docker. So it should be just Docker Compose. So that is the file. I don't remember it was Docker Compose. Okay. So I'll go out here. I'll paste this, right? Now, there are a couple of issues with this command. For example, you can see I've said Docker Compose. Now, what it will do is it will take the Docker Compose file out here. Sorry, I didn't remember it was Docker Compose or Docker Compose up, right? Now you can see here, you can see it is saying attaching to Docker MVC core app 1. And this attaching, if you see everyone here, if you watch here, this one, you can see there's a message out here attaching. Now, what is this attaching actually? This attaching, what it does is that because it's a compose file, right? So he's trying to write into a log file. He's trying to write all the logs, what happened in this Docker into a log. If you're not interested into getting into that, right, what you can do is you can just say here. So if you just want to don't want to do that, Docker Compose -d, what it does is that it does not get into logging. It will just exit as soon as the container is created. So you can see now the container created, web app started. You can see now he has also given a name to it. We did not give the instance name. He has given Docker MVC core app 1, right? So there it is. Now remember, let me delete this. I want to show you something else also. Now remember, you can specify multiple ports before I run the application. You can specify multiple ports out here. You can go here and say that, okay, I want to run this in one more port, just in case. Remember, this is a list. This is a YAML. It is a list. So we are saying that run on 8181. Assume. Like this. So now what it will do is, if I do a Docker compose up with a -d, it will try to run this on 2 ports. Okay. So you can see, you can simplify your dependencies, that Docker run, whatever I was taking, right? You can simplify it, right? So now if you see out here, let us see, this is the Docker MVC core app, right? It is running. And if you go to view details out here, you will see that it is now having 2 ports, right? Because you said you want to run on 2 ports. So one is 8080, which is the one port mapping with 80, and 8081, which is mapping with 8081, right? So you can specify such kind of complexity. Now my expectation is that I should see my environmental variable ASD. There it is. You can see, remember our image environmental variable was something it was, Docker value 123. But because I specified at the compose level, at the Docker compose level, at the instance level, it has now taken up ASD, right? So tomorrow what we'll do is, guys, we will, now that we know how to pass the environmental variables, tomorrow for the connection string, we'll use this methodology. Okay. So guys, any questions on the environmental variables? Any queries, whatever I've taken? Right. So let me do, every time we do a code, let me take from the down and I'll go to the top, right? I'll take up questions, guys. Today we are ending the class a little bit earlier, just because, because of this climate change, suddenly I caught up a mild fever. So every time we do a code change, should we need to create the container instance? Yes, you have to create a new image. You have to create the new container instance. So that's why try to make your code as parametric as possible, right? So the answer is yes. Every time we do see, there are 2 processes. It's a two-step process. One is to create the image and then is to create the instance. Easy. Now, if you change the code, then you have to recreate the image, right? So answer is yes, you have to. Right? Docker versus Docker compose file. I don't know what is a Docker file. I know Docker. So Docker file. Yes. So we have a Docker file. So the question is that what is the difference between a Docker file? So this one, if you're asking, this Docker file, that is a question, and Docker compose, they're very different. Right? Docker file has all the steps, what do you want? How do you want your image to be created? You want the IIS, you want the ASP.NET runtime. While Docker Compose just has parameters, that which port to run, dependencies. It has all the parameters provide to create a image. So, yeah. Right. Okay. So what is the use of environmental variables? So, okay, Chandan, you have joined late. Must be, I can just see environmental variables are variables which are stored outside your code, right? So remember, in the .NET part, at least now the environmental variables here also has been highlighted a lot. Because we have been taught like that we believe more to take the parameters from the JSON file, or must be some parameter table and so on. Remember, environmental variables are the best way of setting it because these values are set outside your code. So environmental variables are things, which are in the operating system. So let me just show you. I don't know why this, yeah, am I out? I want to go out of this. One thing, yeah, okay. So I'm trying to answer this question. See, environmental variables are outside your code. So they can be residing somewhere here, for example, like in Java, as you said, they use a lot of environmental variables. Not only Java, everyone uses it, right? So you can see the Java Home is a famous one, but other ones also, like even the .NET also uses a lot of environmental variables, Android, and a lot of people use it, right? So if you provide the variable out here, right, then what happens is the parameterization and your code changes, they are very separate, right? And in your code, what you have to do is that you have to just go ahead and make sure that you use the word environmental variables. And remember, There are more better ways of doing it. This was a very shallow way I've shown you, right? What you can always do is that you can use the configuration and you can say add environmental variables. If you have ever seen in the startup.cs file, one is that the configuration, you can take it from the web app settings.json file. Another one is you can take from the environmental variables also. So the best practice would be to use dependency injection, right? And to actually add the environmental variables here at the configuration level. We'll see that tomorrow. Okay, there is one more question here. Will you also be covering EF core with code first? Yes. So I will not be teaching EF core with code first, but my tomorrow's goal is that I will be going ahead here and creating, because the database is already there, you can see. So the database is already there, right? So what I'll do is our .NET Core application will go ahead. He will do .NET migration, .NET whatever was that, right? Update, all that. So it will go and update all these tables out here. It will run the migration. The environmental variable will be set from outside from the Docker Compose file, and our application should go live. So in the Docker Compose file, I will just go here and say my connection string is this, right? And that's it. And then we have to do a lot of changes out here. Definitely, lot of changes will happen out here, because now in the build, you have to also go and say add -migration, update -database. So we'll be doing with EF core. That's why that won't happen in 1 hour also. Huh? It will take much more than that. So I thought that today we'll do only for 30 minutes. Okay. Okay. If you can, okay, let us see. Let us see from the top. Docker Compose is kind of a bad file to run the Docker file. Is it? Yeah, Docker Compose is kind of a bad file. You can say, yeah, more than the bad file, it is a configuration file. It is a file of configuration. It is not a bad file, actually executes it, right? Executes it, but you can say internally it can be a bad file. I don't know. It can be a bad file which goes and sets a variable. That's possible. Good thinking, right? I got your point, right? It can be a bad file. But the point is that it's from the outside, we don't have to think about it. Yes, it can be a bad file. I'm not aware of it. If we need to change the configuration, then we need to change in the compose.yaml, and then we need to change in the, very good question. No, you don't need to change that. Very nice. So if I want to see now, this is only to set the environment. After that, you can go and you can set it inside the Docker. You can say, Docker, now change my environment. We don't have to now, your Docker is a runtime thing, right? So you can go and you can change your Docker environmental variable. You don't have to again and again go and create an image, right? What is the point of it, right? If we create multiple instances of Docker image, then what is the use of it? If they see multiple images of instances, there are many use actually, guys. That means first thing, think about it. Like where we were creating big virtual machines, now you have the image, you load it, you test it, you're done, right? One use of it. Second use of it, I use it in my SaaS, for creating my SaaS, in my SaaS application. So we have a lot of hospitals out there. The hospitals come to our site. They say they pay the money through PayPal, and they say, we want to create your application. My application is Dockerized. So we create an instance to them and it starts serving them. So again, for SaaS. So the instance creation, this is a magic, and it is used in many places to create the test environment, to create the build environment, to even completely build your application, and give it as runtime to the end user. Why not, So it's a very big boon, huh? Like at least people who want to create, who wants to make their application SaaS based. And even if you're in ASP.NET Web Form, from the business perspective, it looks to be a very big boon, because I remember I had 2 startups, which I'm working with. One of the startup is my favorite one, my healthcare startup, hospital management system, which is now running in 60 hospitals. Extremely proud about it. It is in GitHub. It is open source at this moment. It is in Angular. Now that application, we started building in .NET Core. We started installing in hospitals like standalone installation. Now the time has come that we wanted to do something like this. We wanted to say that, okay, go ahead, give the hospital name, give the hospital logo, and tuck. It should go and create an instance, and it is available for Jupyter Hospital. So what we did, we Dockerized our file, right? And we kept an instance which is tested in the latest version of the hospitals, right? And we had a nice ASP.NET application where the end user can go pay the money, put it internally. It came into a queue. From queue, we use PowerShell and we said, run it, right? And new instances, multi-tenant, safe. Why? Because all the instances are safe. So I think this is a very big boon when it comes to making your application SaaS based, on demand based, right? You can change the Docker variable from outside. You can change the Docker variable. I will take this as a demo tomorrow. You can change the variable. Please note. So tomorrow, two things I will add to I have added to the demo. One is how to secure it, and second is changing the environmental variables on runtime. Let us, now that we know how to use environmental variables, Docker Compose file, tomorrow it is just a matter to integrate our EF core, but it is going to be a very big demo because I have to show you EF core. And I hope everybody is aware of EF core, add-migration, update-database. Can everyone just put it out here? Add-migration, update-database. Everyone is aware of? Okay, fine. So then I will not take that class. And must be, you can just have a look at the other videos, right?